Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, March 1st, 2021. My name is Mike Langford, and welcome back to another episode of DearBands Live, the podcast that explores the paths and stories of career-minded artists and music industry professionals. My guest tonight recently released his debut alternative folk rock album entitled Company Store. He's also the drummer of the Juno Award-winning alternative country gothic folk band, the Strumbellas. Please welcome Jeremy Drury.
Hey Mike, how's it going?
Not too bad. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. Your intro music kind of makes me want to get close to the microphone and speak like I'm trying out for an NPR job.
Excellent. Do you know why I have it?
To induce calm amongst your guests?
No, for just calmness and for me. Because when I'm sitting here and I was doing them in the beginning, this like dead air would kill me. So I was like, I'll just do a little bit of that just to feel, and I'm way more comfortable.
And as a musician yourself, that dead air is like that's what you just strive to avoid your entire life.
It's when you're on stage and it's just like, instead of this after your set, it's, you know, it's awkward. It's awkward. So that's why I have it. It's my comfort zone.
I love it. I'm calm and I'm relaxed. This is
excellent.
Fantastic. It really helps set the mood for me.
It serves two purposes then. Jeremy, what's new? What's going on? It's been a while.
It has been, you know, there's I guess the elephant in the room. There's the pandemic we've been dealing with, and our you know, lives kind of being uprooted from what they were, and trying to find a place in a spot that I'm not really used to, which is kind of being at home an awful lot. You know, not traveling, not experiencing the roller coaster ride that is being a working traveling musician. Kind of being at a little bit of a level point for an extended period of time has been extremely interesting. And yeah, I suppose try to keep busy with the music, with what I can do. And as you mentioned in your intro there, and gave me a whole bunch of genre titles. I'm not sure how to deal with that, but yes, did release my my first solo record. I guess summer, fall of last year, and we just Strumbellas got into the studio late last year. We just released a new single.
Greatest Enemy?
Greatest Enemy is the name of the track. Yeah. So those two things have kind of kept me, I suppose, a little bit busy enough, and helping me feel like I am still a musician and I'm still involved in the industry, despite not doing it kind of, you know, as nearly as every day as it used to be.
Well, it's I don't want to say it's weird, but it's just that idea where we make music and the plan is to go out and perform it live. And it, like, you know, not to hop right into it, but it's just like, at what point last year did you realize, like, hey, we might not be playing shows this year?
Well, it was interesting for us because we did cancel shows previous to the pandemic. We had a Canadian tour booked for, I guess it started in January and February, that we canceled. Unfortunately, Simon's mental health kind of diminished to a state where he just couldn't do it. You know, that decision was extremely difficult and challenging on its own. But I think it did help me with my mindset when, you know, the pandemic kind of rolled in, you know, in March and stuff started getting canceled. I was already in the mindset of I'm off for a couple months. So maybe it was a little bit of an easier transition for myself because it wasn't so abrupt, you know, considering bands that were out on the road mid-tour and
right,
all of their dates got canceled while they're out doing it. So, you know, that was maybe a little bit more of a shock than we experienced. But it was definitely something that, you know, we had all, I guess, had, you know, hope and faith that Simon was going to pull through and we were going to be able to start doing our summer dates, you know, string of festivals booked, and, you know, there was stuff kind of pushed off. I think we had stuff even booked as far out as December or so at the beginning of last year. And then they just kind of one by one, they kind of started toppling, and some of the stuff that was later in the year was kept on the books for a little while before they kind of, before the executive decision was made, that we were going to move on from them and try to rebook or figure out what was going to be next. And, of course, all that kind of stuff still just really up in the air. We keep in touch with some of the agents, the booking people, the festival type people, like, there's still contact being made, but everybody's like, well, we're just playing it by ear. We don't really know. We'll just take it as it comes, kind of thing. So, it was, as I mentioned, I was a little bit more prepared for it, but at the same time, there was things that I wasn't prepared for. As I mentioned, losing that roller coaster ride, losing all the traveling, and just, life as I knew it kind of being upended. And that ended up, to just be really, well, I guess I'm the guest. We're talking about me, so I can be selfish about the things.
Yeah, definitely.
But for me, that ended up kind of being like the biggest challenge was, what do I do now? 10 years of Strumbellas and, ultimate focus and priority. And that's just, it's just gone. And, you kind of strip that away. And, I started asking myself, like, who am I? What do I do? When there isn't that association with music, or what do I do? How do I occupy my time? So it's been a really interesting time of some self-reflection and discovery, and I think it's really been positive in some aspects. Just trying to find the silver lining, and again, just trying to be positive.
Well, there's a couple of things I love to touch on there. Again, with Simon, the singer for Strumbellas, again, like, touring is difficult. Touring is very difficult mentally. It's very difficult on everybody. And the idea where if you decide to pull out and not go out for the next tour, it could be 2 or 3 months, it could be 6 months, but the way that things kind of started to take shape, or I guess better term, fall apart in March and April with the music industry in general. It's one thing to go, we can't go out right now, and maybe I'll pick up some side gigs here, or we'll go do this or go do this over here. It's like the whole music industry had to kind of take a seat for a second, and it's looking like it could be a good chunk of this year too. So it's been difficult for everybody, but to ease into it, there's a little bit of a.
But that was my mindset, like you said, like when Simon wasn't going to be able to go out on the road, well, maybe I'll pick up another gig, maybe I'll find something else. I'll hop on a tour somewhere, or find some people to just, even just do local shows or something like that. That was, that was a bit of a direction
something else.
In my mind. And again, at a certain point, you just realize that you don't have that ability, and that's just not going to happen. And again, left with, what do I do? How do I deal with this? So, and again, just, silver linings. I'm almost like, it makes me, if we got, say, past that Canadian tour that we'd canceled, and we were looking at those summer dates, and if Simon wasn't in a position to be able to say yes or no at that point, there's almost part of me that's relieved that decision was just made for us.
It's true.
That it wasn't, that pressure wasn't put on him. In addition to, the realization that, okay, well, yes, me as a person, I want to go out and do these gigs. I want to go perform live. I love doing this kind of thing. When you start to realize, or, kind of look beyond yourself and see that, well, if I don't go out and do it, it means that my bandmates aren't going out and doing it. It means all the support teams and service providers that you work with are, that's a part of their business that they end up kind of missing out on. So I can only imagine the difficult decision that Simon had to go through to say, hey, come to the his bandmates, the 5 of us, and just be like, guys, I can't do this. And, there's a certain level of understanding and care and appreciation for his situation, where he's at. As you maybe move away from him personally, there's, some of these service providers might not really understand what's going on or be as sympathetic. So, you kind of, it's like young bands that never want to say no to a gig because they don't want to miss the next opportunity. Like, those kind of things start going through your mind of like, well, if we cancel this, are they going to have us back again? If we say maybe to this and then kind of pull out last minute, it's not going to bode well. So taking all of that pressure off of Simon by just, like I said, having the decision made for him that he wasn't going to do any shows in the summer, I think was probably a huge relief to him. I think it was a huge relief to the rest of the band to not have to, I didn't want to ask him. Like, I didn't want to say, hey dude, make a decision. Like, that's a lot of work. He's trying to, deal with himself and his own issues and his own experience. And then kind of trying to get him to be responsible for the business and the organization and that, like, that's a huge ask. So, I'm glad the pressure wasn't there, and he's been just kind of given, just take the time, take what you need, which I mean, we don't get me wrong, like we would have given him everything that he wanted, kind of, and continue to, but just, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. So it was just, okay, focus on the healing.
No, you're right about that. Cause that's one of those things. Like it's tough, especially for singers. Cause the amount of time with singers, like there's a lot of pressure on them to make sure they can go and perform. And it's like we're both drummers. We both play the drums. It's one thing to have a sore arm or a bum knee or something and not feel like you want to go and perform, or you're just like, you're tired. But with singers, like, yeah, when they're not feeling like they're at their best, they're able to go and perform. When we're in bands with people, we care about people in the band. If you're in a band and where no one cares for each other, it's not a very good relationship. So the idea where if you're, and again, like the amount of pressure on singers, and from people in bands, when they put their hand up and say, you know what, I don't think I can do this, or I don't think I'm at my best to go and do this. If your band's not supporting you, like, there's a big problem there. So like, I think it's awesome to hear that. Like, there's some love in the band where everyone's just like, no, this is good that we can take some time off. And you're right. Silver lining, like maybe it was good that he didn't have to make that decision. Everyone could go, you know what, take the year off. We'll figure this out. And we're in it together. So there's 6 people in Strumbellas.
Yeah.
That's a lot of emotions and egos and personalities to juggle. And it's everyone wants what's best for the team. Yeah. I'm sure. So
we don't always agree, and
that's the wonderful thing.
On our best days, we don't always agree. So, yeah. And I think that it's, something that the band kind of had early on was that family vibe. There was really early on, it was always, the partners and, any back in the really early days, any children that were around at that point, like, everyone would come out to the, festival. We'd all hang out backstage and have picnics during the day kind of thing. And, we would have barbecue dinners at, people's houses and kind of be social like that. So like, I think being close in ways other than in just the band setting, I think, really kind of set us up for, well, I mean, being in a band is a relationship, it's a marriage kind of thing. And I think some of that stuff ended up really kind of setting a really healthy foundation for how we communicate, how we work together, how we recognize differences and work with them and try to use it to our advantage rather than, our detriment kind of thing. So yeah, it's totally like, when one of us is down, like we all see it, we all recognize it, we all do our best to either pick them up or give people the space they need or whatever. Like, we're a sensitive band.
No, it's good. Again, you've toured a lot. I do want to get more into this later because you have toured a lot and of spirits. I want to get into that as well, but take a bit of a turn. Let's go back to like early years of you starting in music. Because you're from Lindsay?
Yes.
Ontario?
Yep.
and I'm from Peterborough. We'd probably crossed paths several times before we really crossed paths, I think in 2005.
Yes.
So when you moved to Toronto, like why did you decide to do that? Like, what was the transition to move to Toronto?
Well, that ended up being, and I'll say there was between Lindsay and Toronto, I actually spent 4 years in London, Ontario.
Oh, okay.
I thought I was going to go to school. You finish high school, the high school band kept going a little bit. We all moved out west for about 6 months before we realized it was a terrible decision.
What band was that?
That was Fat Chance. Who, yes, because you and that goes back to us connecting, and you played in Johnny Law. And
some trivia here.
And Johnny Law takes together. So that ended up being funny because yes, in 2005, we can get there, but like it was just
that's before that, yeah.
You're Langford. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I get it. Peterborough guy, yeah, drummer, yeah, sweet, okay, yeah. So yeah, after high school, Fat Chance went out west. We signed to a small label out there, and we thought we were going to be rock stars. We all ended up working at gas stations. Just dying to be home, dying to be around everything that inspired us musically, which was our friends and our family, and and the hometown of Lindsay. Not that it was a positive influence, but it was an influence. There was we were reacting to it. That's part of what we were kind of doing. So I guess at a certain point, I was just like, the Fat Chance moved back. We broke up. And I'm like, oh, I guess I should get on with real life at this point. Kind of, I don't want to say I gave up on the dream, but I was very much, well, I'm going to go to school and I'll get an education, and, applied for the music industry arts at Fanshawe, thinking, okay, I want to be in music somewhere. And it just never ended up going. I ended up getting a job at a warehouse, and it paid really well, and it was a smaller family-run kind of company, and I really enjoyed it. I really thrived. I learned, and it was an amazing experience, and I did that for 4 years. When something hit me all of a sudden and was, hey, I don't think industrial hydraulics and pneumatic sales is Jer's future. Like it was, although everything was going really great, there was an emptiness. I really wasn't doing music. I did have a couple friends in London that I, was musical with. My cousin's down there. He's a guitarist. We've jammed since we were kid kind of thing. So, we got together every now and again, and it was fun, but it wasn't, just not satisfying at all. And it was I guess the familiar that kind of called me back. And, a couple friends had gotten another band going, and they were based out of Toronto, and I was like, I'm not doing anything. I don't want to say I feel like I wasted 4 years, because like I said, I learned a ton, but it's like I'm 4 years behind on this music thing if this is really what I want to do. So, but
like what age are you at that? Because I don't know this part of Jer's story.
I feel like, well, when I was out west, I think I turned 19 when I was out west.
Oh, geez.
And then we came back, like my birthday's in March, and we were back that summer. I spent maybe another 6-8 months in Lindsay, and then ended up moving to London. So 4 years there. So I don't know, 23, 24. I'm like, okay, this isn't industrial sales isn't what I want to do.
It's not your calling. It's someone's calling, but it's not your calling.
Yeah. So yeah, the kind of old high school mates were, hey, we got a band going. It'd really be great if you could come out, kind of thing.
What band was that?
What were they called at the time? That was Hyper Cricket, who eventually became No Hawks. And that was, I guess, the connection there was Scott Hazelton, who had also played in Fat Chance, was in it. Andrew Exworth is a guy who's a very good friend of mine. We've just always been musical friends. And then another guy, Dave Fenton, who was on bass, which oddly tied all together. We went to the same grade school together, and we played in like the school band together. I was a couple of years older than him, but he was on bass guitar and I was on drums in when I was in grade 8. we were playing music together. So
That's
it
awesome.
just ended up being really cool. You fast forward whatever the out past high school into your early 20s, kind of reconnecting with, hey, this guy that I played with when I was, 14 years old. Here's another guy I played with all through high school. Another guy who was just, a great friend through high school as well. So, so they convinced me. And I said, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give up this, this decent job that I could make a career for. I could stay here until I retire, kind of thing. And kind of threw it all away and extremely broke.
That's most musicians in Toronto, though.
Extremely poor.
It's very difficult.
Extremely broke. Kind of just trying to find, working whatever job was just that I could get, really. And then, in a roundabout way, that whole story it was Andrew Exworth, who I was in the band with, ended up helping me get a job at the place he was working at, which at the time, and I think probably by the time we reconnected, it was Technicolor that I was working at.
Okay.
Probably there, which is, film and television post-production house. And that has actually ended up being really cool because it went from working like in a warehouse environment with, maintenance type workers in factories to creative types in film and television. And it was really fantastic because it not just film and television, but they had, audio studios there as well. So, they were still recording music back then in studios. They don't really do that so much anymore. Not that facility at least, but so that kind of opened up the doors to a whole new, a whole new social network and whole new kind of, I guess, whole new friends, and then a whole bunch of other musicians as well, because I ended up Hypercricket, as they were, was the first of 4 bands that I was in kind of simultaneously for a number of years.
That's what I wanted to get to, because it's like, what I remember is you had like your own rehearsal space for all of your bands to rehearse in, if I remember correctly. And I always thought, like, that is intense. Like that's dedication to the craft right now, where you're like, you know what? You can jam in my basement. I'll just get my own rehearsal space downtown Toronto, and then I can use my drums, and we're good.
and it ended up being like, I always thought it was funny because it would always sound like a joke when I told people that, I literally jammed 8 times a week, like it's, every day, twice on Sunday, and very literally, very, very literally. And I mean, I remember at the time thinking,
hey AJ,
hey, we haven't got to you yet. Hold on, AJ. Don't worry about that. So I was, I'd work my shift at Technicolor, and it was actually, the rehearsal space was like a 5-minute walk from where I worked. So I'd finish work, I'd go to the rehearsal space, whatever, blast off for a couple hours, kind of thing. The kitty corner to the rehearsal space was a rabba, and I used to joke that it was my kitchen, because I would basically just I'd grab something there on my way home after rehearsal, and that was my dinner, and then I just kind of rinse and repeat. And I did that. I'm not sure quite how long I did the 4-band thing, or did this jamming 8 times a week, but it felt like an eternity. It was probably maybe a couple of years of doing that. Really, before I decided, I came to the realization that I wasn't doing myself any favors, and I probably wasn't doing the bands that I was in any favors either. As the story progresses and you kind of maybe get closer to the Strumbellas, I think there's a certain point I realized that, just because you're in a band and you play in that band and you do the shows, doesn't mean that's you're off the hook. That's all we need from you. If you're really making a push, really making a go of it, do yourself the favor and kind of get that engine firing on all cylinders as best as you can. Like, if one guy's out postering,
It's always something to do.
If it's only one guy out postering, just think of how much ground you can cover if there's 4 guys out postering, like that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
if it's,
the leverage of more band members.
one guy hounding venues to get gigs, your chances are going to increase if you got 4 guys, hounding venues to get gigs, kind of thing. So
it touched on this actually a couple of weeks ago, and it's the idea of like, there's a band that has 4 people in it. You have the the manpower of 4 people to get lots of work done, but then you see a solo artist and how much work they have to do. But it's like, why are AAA solo artists, in my opinion and on paper, that much bigger than AAA bands? And it's like, because that solo artist has a team of probably 20 people around them as leverage, and it's different how that kind of magnifies later on. But it's just, you hit it right on the head. It's just like, when you've got the band members, like, there's always stuff to do. There's always more shovels in the ground to get work done.
A great way of putting it. Yeah. Great way to put it. Great analogy.
Other thing too, you mentioned having the several bands. I think I remember us in the studio years ago having this chat about having the multiple bands, and I was of the thought, like, spread yourself out a little bit to see who's serious about things, but eventually one of them's going to look like not to say a better bet against the other bands that you're playing in, but it's one of those things where you start to see the potential in it, and you start to kind of feel it's bubbling a little bit. It's like, you've only got 24 hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's a lot more to that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so coming from, I don't know how much we want to skip ahead of having the jamming 8 times a week in your jam space downtown Toronto. But the transition from that to deciding, like, maybe I need to cut back on some of these bands, or like, what was that like? What was that process like?
It was difficult. It was actually really difficult, because I very legitimately enjoyed all the music that I was playing, and I enjoyed that I was doing stuff in different genres, and my musical taste is I like to think is fairly wide. Yes, at the heart of everything I was doing, I'm just it's just a rock drummer, but there was stuff that was more aggressive, there was stuff that was more laid back, there was stuff that was more stuff that I was able to be a little bit more creative on drums with, and had a little bit more space. And so there was elements that I enjoyed about the music itself that made it difficult to figure out, okay, well, I'm going to have to slowly kind of start backing away and kind of figuring out, what position am I going to be in at the end of all this? And am I going to have any friends left after this? as well. But I think I really appreciated that. I think everybody really understood, at a certain point, I did start to kind of, I had told myself I was going to give myself until I was 30. And by the time I hit 30, I was like, that was when I was going to kind of do this reset of like, okay, let's get on with your real life again. Just
reassess things.
Repeat of what happened 10 years ago kind of thing, of just like, okay, this isn't going to work out. Like, it's a pipe dream kind of thing. So I told myself, by the time I was 30, dial it back. It did become clear that some of the bands that I was in did feel more like a hobby. They did feel more like it was a social time for the members. The hunger wasn't there quite the same as I saw it in some of the bands. So that became, it was part of the decision for sure. It was, you're just kind of balancing like, well, I really like this music. I really like these people. And it wasn't necessarily all the same. So, I just kind of went with, okay, yes, I'm kind of getting near the end of how much more of my life I'm going to dedicate to this. Let's make sure I'm in it for a right reason. I won't say the right reason, but a right reason. My little calculations, I'm sure I was like pros and cons list, like, where does everything kind of fit in? And, and ultimately kind of started, just started backing away. And people understood, people knew that I was just, it was really just, burn the candle both ends, and, I wasn't able to maintain it. And, there was always a little bit of frustration understanding, but frustration when, I'm in a situation where it's a, first come, first serve gets the booking kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, really frustrating. So, band A takes a booking, band C a week later says, hey, we got an offer for this date. And I'm like, sorry.
You're running into some conflicts.
There was a fairly good understanding. I think most of the people that I was playing with at the time, kind of knew each other through me, through passing each other in the hallways as they were coming in and out of the So, I think, everybody kind of got along, but there was also like, there was an element of like, I wish we had Jared to ourselves, and I wish he wasn't spread so thin, and I wish he could do this. And, and like I said, I realized that I wasn't really doing anyone any favors either. So it was really nice. There was a couple of the groups, found other players and continued on. And I felt really good about that. That it was just like, okay, sweet. It's, the whole thing didn't collapse. There was one band that it was kind of, as soon as I said I was out, there was another member that was like, well, if Jared's out, I'm out. And then, kind of left with two people in the band. They're like, okay, we're folded, we're done kind of thing. So, that was unfortunate, but it was also like, I mean, we could do a 2-hour podcast on why that band failed, but that's,
there's a lot of podcasts where we could, I might actually just start another one, just like, what happened. I don't actually want to give the name of what I would call that podcast, because it's pretty brutal. But
okay.
I actually want,
that's one thing. If you want me on, like I can, I can't tell you what's made, say, the Strumbellas successful, but I can tell you why every other band I've been in has failed. Like I feel like I'm an expert at that.
What are your top 3 without putting you on the spot? 3 reasons why bands don't work.
Well, I think number 1 is, how do I put this in a nice way?
Because I can add 1 or 2 after too, just so you're not.
Yeah, no, I
by
think,
yourself.
1 is just, and again, trying to think of this in a positive way. I don't think people understand exactly what's involved.
Like the bigger picture of a successful band.
Yeah, kind of like, I don't think, and again, kind of seeing what Strumbellas did and seeing what some of these other bands did, like Strumbellas, just like, they never let up. It was relentless. It was constant. It was, whereas other ones would be like, no, I guess, maybe let's not get together. Like, I'd rather go and do this social activity, or I'm going to go and do this. And,
it's prioritizing.
Definitely part of it, is prioritizing. And I think tied into that is the idea of sacrifice. I don't think people realize the sacrifices that you kind of are asked to make, to get yourself in a position to be able to, say, find the success beyond, the regional tour. That'd be one of them. The other one is just like, I mean, if you get together and a rehearsal means, a 6-pack and a couple doobies, like,
it's a rec sport for a lot of bands. I get it.
Maybe you're not going to get there. And I mean, not to say that I wasn't responsible in that respect either at times. But that was one that I feel was kind of just pretty clear, is that it was, considering it like it is a job, it is serious. It's not, yes, by all means, it's got to be fun. Like, if it's not fun, then really question why you're doing music in the first place. It's got to be, it absolutely has to be. But when it just kind of becomes this, like, okay, yep, we're getting together, this rehearsal is going to cost me 4 tall cans of beer. Like, it's not the greatest footing, I felt.
No, it's important, because it's one of those things. Actually, there's one thing I want to step back for a second. You mentioned you had the 4 bands, and you had there's different itches that were getting scratched between the different bands. You may not hear it in some of Jer's most recent recordings, but Jer is a great rock, like hard rock and metal drummer, from what I remember. like you are technically really awesome to work with in the studio. So it's like the idea where you can kind of keep, again, I always think of it as scratching the itch, where like you got these different bands to test you, because when we were working together in the studio, it was the Sunlit Ambush record. When you were there, it's like you had drum parts. You didn't just like play the song and just kind of flounder around. It's like you had parts for the songs, and it's like that is something that not all drummers possess. Not all drummers have this mindset of like, how does the song actually go? So,
and that blows my mind, because thinking about it on the opposite side of that, like I just couldn't understand that. Like it just doesn't make like, you know, you guitarists know what the chords are, you know, vocalists know what the melody is. Why doesn't the drummer know what the drum part is?
Well, the difference with guitar players, it's like when you get in there, you're like, but how does your strumming pattern go? And they're just like, I don't know. I just do this for this amount of time, and then I do that. Or like singers, it's like, well, when do you breathe though in the verses? I don't know. I don't think about it that way. So again, like for you, it's like you probably got a lot of satisfaction out of like playing with these several bands and being able to do all these things, because you are very well rounded as a musician and as a drummer. So the idea of realizing, you know, if we want to move forward, like maybe I need to focus on one in particular. And another thing I want to touch on, again, you mentioned earlier, like bands are like a relationship. And I feel like a lot of bands, when they're playing and they're rehearsing and stuff, are you dating or are you trying to get married, sort of thing? Because I do feel like a very successful band, there is a bit of a marriage there. And the way that I would factors their umbrella things for a marriage, it's like you kind of don't want to go to bed angry, but you're also not thinking if you get mad enough, you'll just leave and go do something else. And I think there's a lot of bands where they're just kind of jamming. It's a hobby. It's fun. But if you can just go do something else, like it's casual, you're dating. And it's like when you want to get serious about it, as much as I would tell musicians, date around, as far as like find a group that you think's got potential, but as you're saying, like get serious about something. And once you know that everyone's invested in it, it makes it a lot easier. And I think too, it helps. I'm sure you had this feeling too, where you're like, I know everyone else is working right now. It's not just me. And I know that somebody else isn't thinking I'm just the one working right now. And
I think that was one thing that you kind of touched on, something that I think was the difference with the Strumbellas, and I have a clear memory of being in the rehearsal space when kind of this conversation happened. I don't remember what the catalyst for it was, but it was, you know, band kind of gets to a position and it's just like, okay, you know, we were doing all right, things were looking good, you know, we had some connections, we had some networks, things were happening, and you know, I think it was probably touring, I think, that was really ended up being the question. That was like, if we want to take this to the next level, we need to tour. If we need to tour, as you know, as the six of us, we all need to kind of commit to doing this touring thing. And of course, everybody's got their jobs and, you know, their lives, and they're doing what they're doing. And there was a very specific moment, like I said, I remember it in the jam space, where it was like, are you in? And it was a very serious, like, not just you're coming out every week to jam, right? It was like, you're going to sacrifice, you're going to make it work. You're going to figure this out. You're going to, you know, get the time off work or figure out your finances. And it was like, and we sat there and it was just like, asked ourselves, like, are we in? And, you know, we all said yes. And I don't think, you know, I don't think any of the other bands even got to that point, but it wasn't like it was ever discussed you know, to that level. And I think that's, you know, somewhat similar again with a relationship. You know, you're dating, and you know, you just
what are we?
You're like, what are the rules? What are the restrictions? Like, how does this work, kind of thing? And until you start talking about your future, and you know, if you really do want to be in the committed relationship, you know, there's a certain point where that, you know, that conversation happens. And I mean, maybe maybe the equivalent is, you know, we got engaged, you know, at that point.
Yes.
You know, we were like, okay, yes, I'm committing to dedicating my life to you and to this band. And then, you know, and then from there, I think with the, you know, a clear sense that we were all in it together and that we were all in, it just made things happen.
Do you remember how you felt after that meeting? or just that talk?
I was probably like, if I know myself, I probably question the seriousness of the other members.
Okay.
But I mean, it was all such a different scenario and a different situation with that band that it's difficult to say, kind of pinpoint, like, how did I feel about it? Like, I felt, I felt good and I felt positive that it was the kind of thing where, everybody did commit, everybody did kind of go all in and commit to each other. And that, and that felt good. It felt like it was something that, I hadn't necessarily had previously, or at least since Fat Chance when I was in high school. Cause we all
true. Yeah.
moved out together and like, we were like, yeah, we're going to do this. Like, so it wasn't until, it wasn't until the Strumbellas started talking like that I really felt as though, maybe they were serious. Maybe they were making a go of it. And actually thinking about it now, it's even despite like if people are listening, or if my friends or former bandmates are listening, like when as a bandmate, you kind of question what's going on when you're talking about, oh, I'm gonna buy a house and I'm gonna have kids. And you're kind of like, okay, your band days are over. I don't know if you realize it at this point, but like, you're not going to get there. Interestingly and funny enough, Strumbellas did exactly that, where people did own houses and they did have kids and they ended up going on tour and making it work. So it's almost like I almost proved myself wrong in a way, but maybe I'm not describing it's
No, I get that idea, and the idea too. It's just like it's other responsibilities that would take you away from ultimately the business. Because again, band, all we need to do is swap out the word band for business, and just like there's a lot of, as you said before, it's a lot of sacrifices to make things work with this type of business. And it's not like you can't have a family, you can't have a house, or you can't like have some of these other things, but it's like it doesn't make it any easier. No. And when you talk about it, because you mentioned earlier, it's just like when you start passing over some certain things, certain opportunities, there's somebody else there. And whether that scares the crap out of you or not, it's the reality of it. Not saying you can't live your life, like live your life to the fullest. Like that's all you can do. But it is very tough for a lot of musicians when they start adding some of these responsibilities to their day to day.
And when it did happen with Strumbellas, and there were members that were in situations like that, like I saw the struggle, like it was tough. Like, and I give so much credit to, all of the band members' partners for being as supportive as they were, because without them being as supportive, like we never would have got there. For members that had kids, that was like, yeah, here's the newborn. 3 months later, you're going out on the road for a month. Like, it takes a really special, significant other to be able to kind of just champion their partner's dreams and ambitions like that, and just say, yeah, I'll stay at home and I'll look after the kids and I'll deal with this, I'll deal with that. And
well, there's the argument too, though. Like if you treat it like a job and it's serious and you're invested in it, it's like, what's the difference between going out on tour for a month and having to go on a business trip for a month? Mm-hmm. It's this, and the thing too. It's like it's easier than ever to keep in communication with people. I had Mike Turner on last week, and he was talking about, because his girl had like, part of the job is like there was like a 1-800 line to call into her work or something like that. So like on the road in the 90s, he could get like free long distance. And I'm just imagining, I'm just like, wow, like we don't even think about that. We just quick text, quick call. It's like nothing.
Yeah. No, and yeah, the how many times have I heard member on the bus, and they're on the FaceTime with the kids, and it's just, you're just here coming from every bunk is just little chitter chatter of, children missing their parents actually is pretty sad when you think about it. But
it's the job though, and it's still
and even more challenging is that those first tours, like you said, how different is it from going on a business trip? Well, typically on a business trip, you're going to get paid.
Yes. We should hope so.
That just doesn't happen. Now, I mean, I think we were extremely fortunate in that provincial and federal government have programs to help bands. Like we took advantage of that. That made a huge difference. Just kind of some of the people that we were working with were just kind of definitely sending us off in the right direction. But I think we were just really fortunate that we were able to, to be able to afford to do it. We just figured out how to do it like as cheaply and economically as possible. And then tried to go that way, and then just really pushed merch in those early days. Like
that's your lifeline.
That's what it put gas in our van, and it fed us from time to time, and it was really important. But yeah, the difference between going off on the business thing and it being okay, it's great, you're making your salary, you're still bringing in the money. It's like, oh no, you go off and you're coming back and you've burned a week of your vacation time and spent a couple $100 on your food, because we weren't paying ourselves per diems at the time either. So like it was tough. And it's a commitment, and it's it was a risk for sure. That ultimately, yes, it did pay off, but we're the minority. Like, for every 100 bands, there are 0.025 actually where they can kind of be financially sustainable. And then even crazier that we're doing it in a 6-person band. You slice that pie up, those slices get smaller the more members.
I just want to jump in for a second here. I saw an article you're talking about how like back with the pandemic stuff, like bands can't afford to tour. And I'm reading that, I'm just like, even when things were good, most bands couldn't afford to tour. So like reduced capacity, so they can't sell the tickets. It's just like, I know lots of bands that'd be like, okay, well, still costs us money to go out and try to keep this thing rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. And that's where I was just
imagining. Expensive.
We would, the Shoes started doing their social distance gigs. I think their cap was 50. And I'm like, well, we could do those if we charge $1,000 a ticket. We can make this work.
Then we're there.
But obviously 1,000's maybe a little bit much, but I mean, the back end of putting on a show at a certain level, you're like, we have crew. We do have service providers. We do have, there's lots of people that kind of, I'll take a little bit of piece out of this. So, kind of faced with the idea of, kind of bringing numbers down on things. It was just like, how do we bring the show that we want to bring to people and do it at a fraction of the cost? And, that for us, that was really difficult. It was really a challenge. And we just we shied away from exploring those opportunities, very much. And somewhat, I mean, some of the live streams I've seen have just been absolutely phenomenal, as far as production goes into it. But, and we did start looking into some of those costs to get to that kind of level. And you're like,
it's a promotional tool for the most part, I think.
Yeah.
For some of the costs that come in, it's like, if you want to make a big 75-minute commercial, then.
Yeah. And if we, and maybe we would have thought differently if we were at a different point in our album cycle.
That's true.
But because we had kind of, we were like, the Canadian tour was basically going to be the end of the Rattlesnake cycle. So at that point, it was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, that's it. It's done. We'll just kind of, we'll close the books on that one and see what happens next. So, and now at this point, coming out with a single, we're just like, we're still not necessarily feeling as though we need to go, well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the rest of the band, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge to kind of put that commitment into, the kind of production that we would want to put on. When there's, I guess there's so many areas where we can work on doing the promotion, whether it be, through social media or through our radio campaigns, through whatever placements we can get with the publisher. Like, we'll check on those ones. We'll bark up those trees and see what we can find.
So you got 6 people in the van, you're out touring. I'm just backtracking for a second. 6 people in the van touring. At what point did things start to kind of heat up and you're just like, this is working? Or did you have that thought cross your mind?
I have a memory of, we played the Mansion in Kingston, probably off. I can't remember. I can't remember if we got into the second record yet or not. Possibly. But it was our first time playing in Kingston at all. It's at the Mansion. If you're not familiar with it, I think there may be 120 cap room in around there, not very big, but we sold it out. And it's like, we've never been here. How do you people know about us? I don't understand this. Talking with, people at the show afterwards, like, why are you here? Just, I'm sure fans love it when the band's like, why are you guys here? Like, what, that kind of thing. So, and it was at that point, and it was the, I think the radio station there.
What year is this?
2013.
Okay. I just for context.
Yeah. We released Hope was in 2015, and it was before that. So yeah, sometime kind of in the couple of years leading up to that. But yeah, we'd sold this place out, and we'd never been there before. And some of the touring that we had done previously was playing to similar sized rooms and say there being 40 or 50 people there. And we did see growth. You'd go back and you'd see, then the next time there would be 70 or 80 people there. And then the next time they put you in a bigger room. And we'd seen that with continually going back to the places and kind of building that audience and, building the fan base kind of one fan at a time. So we did this Kingston show and it sold out, and it's the first time we'd been there. That's when I was like, what's going on here? And it was on the radio. And when we started getting the radio play, that really felt like that was opening up the doors. That was, we can go to a place for the first time and people know who we are. And to me, like, that's when it really kind of started to snowball in a way. Is that we did end up getting that radio support. We did end up having people come out to shows, the first time we played a town or a city. And that's when it started to be like, wow, like there's more and more people coming out and places we've never been before. Like, something's happening, something's going on. And that's when it started to feel like, okay, we might actually be onto something, because we would, you'd book the gig, and if it's in a 100 cap room, maybe the guarantee is $100 and they're going to give you a cut of the rest of the door kind of thing. And, start settling shows at the end of the night, and you've made expenses, and you're actually earning money. That was like, well, this is how we remain sustainable. This is how we pay for the next tour, or pay, and it just kind of like, again, snowballing in a way is just the best way, because it's not like there was one thing that happened or one event or anything. It just was this slow build. That really felt like radio was one of the biggest door openers for us, as far as making that work.
For bands, when you start having enough money come in to cover your expenses, it's a game changer for how you can make plans. Because when you're so used to just constantly trying to because like a lot of bands, they do operate in the red, and you have to look at it as an investment. And when, you go from making $200 or $500 a show, all of a sudden, if you get $1,000 a show and now you've covered your expenses and you're like, oh, this is good. And then you make like $3,500 and you're like, this is fantastic. If we could just do this 5 nights a week, this would be great. It's just a game changer.
I mean, I remember our first $500 guarantee and we were losing our shit. Like it was unbelievable. And it was the kind of thing where like, I mean, we could keep costs down pretty much, especially initially if it was, kind of in the Toronto area, because the expense was really just get yourself there.
Yeah.
So like, that was able to be covered. And yeah, once that started happening and once these, and once the booking agent was kind of able to solidify, was able to sell us and get us guarantees that we're going to be able to cover the cost of, we'll say that, the gas and a single hotel room, between, or Winnipeg and Calgary or something like that.
Oh, that's a drag.
You're just like, we can do this. This is possible. So yeah, like you said, it just ends up really helping kind of plan your next steps because you do have this picture of like, yes, we can do this. This is sustainable. We can go out. The guarantees from the shows are going to at least get us there. If we do well and we meet expenses, bonus, we were all very much into, being, out in the crowd selling the merch ourselves kind of thing. And, that really helped. And man, yeah, actually even thinking about it, like, if anybody bought a t-shirt from us on one of our, very first tours, like, thank you so much because
you
made it possible.
Made it seem like a drop in the ocean at times, but like really, like it was the butterfly effect. It's like, it really can have a huge impact down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. So from there, I'd say, maybe don't ask too many detailed questions about from that point to anytime in the future, because it's all just a blur at this point.
Well, that's what this is. It's a good segue because Spirits was on Hope. That came out, you said 2015 or 2016?
I think 15, maybe late 2014, actually in Canada, and then the States or worldwide 2015.
As far as actually, just while you're touched on that, like touring in Canada versus the States, world of difference financially. I found just the distance between cities and hotels and gas, food, everything.
And the toll on yourself and your body is way more tolerable as well, because it was, the Canadian tourists, you've done them. It's, you finish the show, you get off stage at, 1:00 and you drive for 2 hours afterwards because you've still got 8 hours to get to the next
venue. It's a thing.
You gotta get up at 6 a.m. So like, and that's rinse and repeat every day. And you're in Canada, you're spending, if you're lucky, it's a 4-hour drive, but realistically it's an 8-hour drive. And even then it's, potentially more. I memories for sure of it being like, okay, you got a 16-hour drive ahead of you and you got 14 hours to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, in Canada, it's very much a 4-hour drive to the 8-hour drive. So so we got Spirits came out on Hope. I wanted to say, like, as far as the writing process goes with Strumbellas, did you demo that song, or do you remember hearing the demo of that song?
As with most of our stuff, we see like Simon's iPhone demo is typically kind of the first place we end up hearing stuff. It's much more developed now because he actually has a home studio. It's at such a different level, but stuff like that was very rudimentary. He used, maybe even for Spirits, the early stuff, maybe he was working with GarageBand. He just had like a drum loop in place and, just haphazard instrumentation, just kind of whatever he was feeling, trying to get a direction going. Sometimes I'll go back through my emails and find stuff like that and hear and listen to the early versions and just think to myself, like, it's actually quite different, because there's some songs that are like, wow, did that ever come a long way from that first demo, to like, wow, that didn't change at all. And it can go either way. And that really depends on, kind of what ends up happening when, Simon presents it to the rest of the band. What we do with it can dictate that as well.
With the undeniable success that Spirits had. Like I remember I was in the car driving to No Frills, and I heard through mutual friends, it's like, oh, Strumbellas got a new single out. Like it's really good. Like it's super strong. And I remember as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, it's a hit song. And but as far as like when you heard the demo, like did it spark anything, or you're just like, no, it's a good song and we'll see what happens?
I can't recall specifically how I reacted to it. But it was one that was always in the forefront of kind of everybody's mind. Going into the recordings for Hope, it was definitely the one that we felt was like, this is something, like, make sure we put the effort into this one. Like we feel really good about that. I know I remember thinking that I liked We Don't Know better.
Yeah, another great tune.
And I would love to live in the world where we released We Don't Know first.
Like an alternate universe that's different?
Alternate universe different, because something that I learned that I didn't really know is like when you have a song as massive as Spirits, it just overshadows everything else. Like most bands, you put out a single and it's got a shelf life. And then they put out another one and it's got a shelf life. Spirits just stayed. It never went away. So we tried to release follow-up singles, and the radio stations were still playing Spirits 30, 40 times a week. So hey, do you have room to put in another Strumbellas songs at 30 or 40 spins a week? So yeah, like, and I mean, I still really like We Don't Know. But I would have liked to have seen what it might have been able to do had it not kind of been overshadowed by Spirits, for sure. Similarly we released a third single off that, Young and Wild, and that was, I felt that was really strong as well. And, again, if I could get in another alternate universe where that was the first one, I'd love to see kind of what happened there. Because I felt like they were all really strong. I felt they were all really great. And I would, I was super happy to share them with the world at that point. But yeah, Spirits was one that we knew we needed to give it some special attention. And, also one that definitely caught the ear of Dave Schiffman, producer on that record. He was pretty excited about that one as well. So it's nice when you've got that kind of like unbiased outside point of view. We probably all had demoitis by that point, and we're just like, oh, this is amazing. This is the best thing we've ever done. Great. And, you get a little bit of dose of reality when someone comes in and says, yeah, that bridge you got, not great. Need something different. So, yeah, that's, working with a producer to be able to kind of help out with that kind of stuff is pretty invaluable, for sure. And then just sonically, the direction that they're able to give it and kind of bring everything together and, kind of make it cohesive. Yeah, that was a big part of it as well. And I should make an extra little point of just noting that as the demo kind of progressed, Simon ended up working with his brother-in-law, actually, who's I got a couple years on Simon, and Simon's older sister's married to this guy, and Brian Pickett. I don't know if you remember him. He was in Lindsay bands, and he and I played shows together in Lindsay, kind of when we were in high school. But he had, say a much better production studio than Simon did. So Simon would go over to his place, and they'd kind of work on some of the sounds, whereas Simon would just be on the iPhone with his acoustic guitar. Brian would help him and just be like, no, here, let's put a proper mic in front of it and do a proper demo. And, they did some structure stuff, and, Brian programmed some drums that was a little bit more than just the loop that Simon had. So a lot of those songs, a lot of the songs off Hope, Brian was a fairly integral part in the in kind of getting everything from Simon's demo stage to the point where the band had kind of a full song to work with and a little bit more clear direction of what Simon was thinking. As it's, you know, when Simon and Brian were working on things, Simon could be like, this is how I hear it. This is how I hear it. And if Simon and I are in a room together and he tells me this is how he hears it, I say, well, this is how I hear it. And without him having that, I think he was really productive, and I think he got a lot of really great stuff done. Because it's that times 5, as you know, you're in a 6-person band and everybody's got ideas. So they were able to, between Simon and Brian, they were able to really kind of like, really shape them and kind of give them some direction that, you know, we get to the studio and it's pretty clear, you know, which way
kind of how it should come together.
Yeah, it helped a lot. Yeah, for sure.
I want to step back for 1 second. There's the first mover advantage with music, like the first impression. So it's one thing to have the songs come out. You mentioned that, you know, we don't know, like thinking like an alternate universe that came out, but I think there's also something about like when you're in a band and you like the music your band has, and there's certain songs you want to place chips on and go, you know, I think this is going to be the one, but it's like, it kind of doesn't matter because it's up to the public to decide. You know, and like having a song that won't leave radio, really good problem to have, sort of thing. So it's one of those things where it's like we can all place our bets on the song that we think might be, you know, the one to kind of move things forward or move the needle. But it's like I always tell everybody, like make it good and love it. But once you release it into the wild, it's no longer up to you.
For sure.
If someone else finds something, goes, that's the one, then run with it. Love them all, but just, you know, back the winning horse. Yeah.
No, and I've been so wrong with my picks on some of these records too.
I don't think we can fairly say that in a way, because again, in alternate universes, another song comes out and like there's another path that could take. So you know, I don't think we can beat ourselves up over that.
Don't, but there's always that piece of me like I didn't win.
Still want to be right.
You know, we did hope, and I think a song called I Still Make Her Cry on that record, and I think it's gorgeous. I think it's beautiful. I think everybody in the world should know that song and be able to sing along with it and identify with it. And you know, on a record with Spirits, not a chance. Not a chance. Song 7 on the record that opens with Spirits.
Let's
be real.
There's one more thing about Spirit. Well, 1.5 more things I want to touch on with Spirits and Strumbellas. Spirits was huge. Do you feel like the song was bigger than the band? Do you think more people knew the song than knew who the band was?
Well, there is no question in my mind that that's the case. No question. And it's funny because it's something that it's something that it kind of ends up coming up in just casual conversations when I am just talking, if people are asking me about it, and just the idea that, you know, it's so much bigger than the band. You know, I see it in my own life when, I guess as a recent example, I started, that's a long backstory. I started going down to the post office to drop off our merch because I'm processing our merch shipments these days. And the gals down there, a couple years older than myself, I'd say. And, you know, you come in and, you know, oh, what's going on? What are you doing? You're in with a bunch of shipments. What's going on? Oh, I play in a band, and, you know, this is our merch that's going out. And what's the name of the band? And, you know, oh, we're called the Strumbellas. Strumbellas. No, I haven't heard of that. Do you got any songs that I'd know? And then I'm just sitting there going, oh, please don't make me do this. And I go, I got guns in my head. That's you? That's your band? Yeah, okay. So yes. The song is bigger. If the gals at the Canada Post desk know the song but not the Strumbellas, then I think, you know. And that happens. It happens all the time. I remember we were in an airport, maybe in Chicago or something like that, delayed flight. And I think I was I already gone through security and all that stuff, but it was delayed. So I was going out for a smoke and coming back in, and TSA agent, kind of asking, what's going on? What are you up to? You're on a work visa. What's the deal? I play in a band, and Strumbellas, never heard of you. And so it's like, I got guns in my head. And that's you guys? Yeah, see these 6 people all asleep on your floor over here? That's us.
Yeah, that's the band. It's not uncommon though. It's not, especially with the way things are with radio. It's like you hear the song, but you don't always see the band name attached to it.
No, and I'm fine with it. I don't have I have zero issue with it whatsoever.
Again, good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Sure, your ego takes a little bit of a hit on that, and you're just like, what do you mean you don't know my band? Like, what I mean? There is, that it happens very internally. It's not something, I'm just so, I'm thankful and I'm grateful that, the music has gotten to so many ears around the world, that it's like, it is bigger than me. It is bigger than myself. It's bigger than my band. And I'm just so, I don't know, like lucky and privileged to have played a role in something as massive as it is. And I will say as still is, because it's still 1.5 million streams a week on Spotify. Still. And we're 6 years later. We, you kind of see some of the numbers from Greatest Enemy coming in, and you're like, oh wow, it's doing great. We're getting a lot of spins, and you're like, yeah, Spirits is still getting 10 times
crushing
that this is. Now, mind you, I mean, a little bit more patient. It hasn't hit radio in the States yet, so we'll see what happens there. But it's the kind of thing where all of our data and sales and streaming numbers are so skewed because Spirits is just here and everything else is just...
So that being said, you play a festival. Where do you put Spirits? Do you put it at the front in case people are not sure who the band is, or do you put it at the end because you close? Or
we close with it. We close with it unless we're doing an encore, and we're not doing an encore unless we're headlining the festival, which I guess has happened a couple times, but generally doesn't. So, our festival, we play that. We'll close with that one, and there's a big, we do a big sing along chorus at the end and kind of get everybody into it. But that's also, that's also how I kind of know that maybe the song's a little bit bigger than the band, because say you're doing your, you get your 60-minute festival slot and everybody's there, and okay. And then we, first chord of Spirits, everybody's phone's up and out, and you're like, okay, yep, you're here for that. Yep. Awesome. But I don't know. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's, obviously bands, kind of need songs that are really going to bring them attention and, get people kind of into the rest of their catalog. And, but even at this point, like, if someone just loves Spirits as a standalone song, like I'm happy with that. I have to think, I'm sure you're the same way. I'm sure everybody's the same way, of just like, that one song from that one band. Maybe you don't even know who the band is, but you'll love the song. And I think that's, just, it's part of the beauty of music, is that it's, you don't have to know the band intimately to be able to appreciate their music. And you don't have to know their catalog to like that one song kind of thing. So, again, just trying to tie that in. That's just the beauty of music.
No, absolutely. How it reacts with people.
And I know how much some songs mean to me. And if this song means the same to someone else, then wow, that's satisfying. That feels really great. That feels really great.
There's one more thing I want to touch on with Strumbellas. You won a Juno. What was it like? Like, what was going through your mind? Because you performed at the Juno as well.
Later, yes.
What was that experience like? As Canadians, for anyone who's listening, Junos are the Canadian Grammys.
Well, it was all if you've read any of the stuff in like from the Jeremy Drury bio, it kind of starts with a story about the Junos and being in grade 8, and it was it was about lunch snacks, and this girl I went to school with, the passion flakies, like the puff of fruits, if you don't know what that is, version of it. But my family never got those. I loved them, so I'd make deals, and it was, if I ever win a Juno, I'll mention your name. And it was like, in the back of my mind, it was always like, yeah, I'm doing music because I want to live up my end of the bargain to this dumb promise I made someone when I was in grade 8, but it's like, it for me, it kind of, maybe it's not the best word, but it legitimized what I was doing. It to kind of be playing in bands, kind of my whole life, and having a lot of fun, but not really getting anywhere with it. Is it was really nice to know that the both the industry and the country was kind of behind us on this, and they were rooting for us. And it was really nice to have that recognition that, like, yeah, we believe in you guys. Like, what you're doing is great. Keep doing it. Here's a little something to motivate you a little bit more, kind of thing. And it was, I remember it was when we were nominated the first time, I think my uncle sent me a note, and he was kind of, he was like, if whether you win it or not, like, you will always be nominated. Like, that can't be taken away from you. Like, maybe you don't win it, kind of thing, but you will always be a Juno nominated artist, kind of thing. And that can never be taken away from you. And it was like, it just gave me that sense of just like, kind of everything I've been doing, like, finally, like, it's real and it's legitimate. And here is, a bit of a point of reference, or yes, it's an accolade, but I kind of felt as though it was like, tough finding the words, but a signal that it's like, you're on the right path. You've chosen, wisely, whereas maybe if I'd never had that, looking back at the career, I might be like, I never really got anywhere. And I don't know if it actually meant anything to anyone outside of myself. And then the Juno just kind of made it be like, no, this is cool. You didn't ruin your life. You will always have this nomination. And then, of course, when we won, it's like, you will always have, I don't really use the title very often. I think you did on the intro, but, Juno Award winning musician, Jeremy Drury, like, go me.
You can't take it away. No, you mentioned too, being at the post office and people's like, I haven't heard of your band. It's like having a nationally recognized award. It's like, it's easier to kind of make it real for some other people. So I had records when I made early on where it's like, that helped people understand that I'm doing this for a living. Mm-hmm. Like working on Canadian Idol, it's like, that was a game changer with a lot of people. Like, oh, it's actually doing this for real now. When before it was like, everything was fine, but that just...
And it's a different. Great signal when you can get some, kind of when you can associate with something at that kind of level, because I'll speak on behalf of my mother and father. Like, they have no idea how the industry works or what goes on in it or anything like that. So, they've learned a whole lot through, this process, but kind of seeing it kind of through their eyes, where, I could, I could tell my dad, hey, yeah, we're going on a 2-week tour, and, all these shows are sold out. And he's like, so? But when the Juno happened, it was like, oh, this is real. This is you out having fun with your buddies. Like, this is actually something going on. And, like the word I used was kind of like a legitimacy. And that was, and I think, the kind of the general public that just doesn't know the intricacies of the industry, that's definitely something that, you know, it's a signal of, yes, you know, this is where we're at. This is the kind of level. And then similarly, that's like when you start talking about like, you know, and again, just, you know, with spirits, like it went gold, you know, it went platinum, it's triple platinum in Canada, you know, it's gold in the States, it's platinum in Italy, it's gold in Germany. And those are the kind of things that it's easy to identify. I would say very much so. I mean, you play hockey, don't you?
In the before times.
In the before times, yeah. So, and I could say that because I don't know the intricacies of working up from like juniors to triple. But
no, definitely.
The Stanley Cup, I know what you're talking about and go, wow, okay, awesome, yeah. Like, you know, and I don't even know what's the prize for the OHL? What cup do they get? Memorial
I think it's
Cup?
the Calder. I think it's the Calder Cup.
The Calder Cup?
Yeah, I thought the Memorial Cup was OHL.
Okay.
I'm gonna get torched.
But I wouldn't know that. It's okay. No, at all. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing, like, you know, and I understand and I appreciate, like, I wouldn't know what all that kind of stuff meant. But as soon as you say, you know, Stanley Cup, as soon as you say, you know, World Series, like those are the kind of things that people are able to kind of, you know, okay, where are you on this?
It's a North Star for a lot of that stuff for people. Like, okay, I get it. I understand this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
so it's nice to present yourself as a musician to people. And instead of it being like, oh, what's the name of your band? Never heard of it. Got any songs I heard of? No, you know, which was the first 30 years of my life, you know, like it just, you couldn't really pass on or express like what you were up to or what you were doing.
Yeah. And just, I'll say, cause I've almost had you for an hour and a half. There's one more thing I want to chat about if you've got 15 minutes for it. But the idea of like, you get nominated, you win. It's like some people have no idea how much blood, sweat, and tears went in to get to that point. I haven't met anybody that really fell into a position to get a nationally recognized award or a hit song. It's like there's a lot of work that goes into it. And so that little nugget of just like, yeah, you know, we did this. And some people are like, oh, this is cool. You know, Jerry won a Juno. But it's like they have no idea how, like, because that would have been 8 years. 8 years of probably grinding it out with Strumbellas to like get to that point, plus all the years of playing in bands before that.
Yeah,
plus,
I mean, not quite 8, but more like.
But yeah, it's like
5, 6. But okay, yeah, no,
but going hard at it. And again, like when you've got 6 people, and like you've got a lot of people working towards that goal, and it's like you kind of get there, and you're like, there's still a lot I probably want to do, but it's a lot of work to get there.
And then the realization of, you know, kind of there being this idea of what's next or what's the next goal or what are our sites next, and seeing the mountain that we're putting in front of ourselves to be able, you know, to even start imagining, thinking about getting to that point. You know, it's just as daunting as what we've already climbed. Like, you know, if not more, like it's still, I hate saying the industry's competitive, but it is competitive, and
it's healthy competition.
It goes back to this idea, like we were talking about before, whereas if you say no, there's someone else there to say yes, and that's constant. Like that never changes. That I've not experienced that changing yet. I'm sure if you got to the point, if you're, you know, if you're a U2 or if you're, you know, maybe I should come down a little bit from there. I'm just
no, go for it.
But you know, like I don't know if you're, you know, maybe if you're Weezer, you can say no to something and they'll ask you back next time anyways. You know, maybe if the
they'll give you a first shot at it.
Dave can be like, no, I can't do that. And they'll still be like, okay, we'll come back next year anyways. You know, no problem. But like, I mean, that's, and I mean, and I still look at that level, you know, probably in a very similar way to when I was a kid looking at bands that were at the level that I'm at now, and just thinking like, that's so far ahead. That's so, like you said, it's so much work. It's so much blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And then it's, knowing what it's taking to kind of be where we're at and maintain where we're at. And then the idea of taking it even further, like, you know, kudos to all of those people that have made it to that point and, you know, kind of gotten whatever they were looking for, whether it be the recognition and the fame, or whether it be a monetary motivation, whether it been just a personal goal. Like, anybody who's gotten to that point, like, I just have a massive amount of respect for that, because like, I only know a fraction of what those people have gone through, and they're still doing it, and they're still getting up there every night and going out on stage and, you know, entertaining tens of thousands of people and, you know, having a great time doing it. And that's, you know, it's extremely impressive, even more impressive than when I was a kid, you know, watching Motley Crue videos going like, oh man, like, oh man, I want to do that. You know, the realization, it comes and slaps you in the face when you're like, you know, you can't actually live. Well, I mean, not anymore. Maybe you could back in the day, but even then I think it was all for show. No, not all for show. I've read the book. Crazy too. Okay, no, maybe bad example. But yeah, just the idea that it's just that somehow, you know, they were just playing a club in LA some night, and just the right person walked in the door, and the next thing they knew, they were flying everywhere. It's just like, it just doesn't happen like that.
No.
So, you know, anybody in those positions, and again, like I said, I looked up, you know, I look at, you know, I think about the bands that I looked up to when I was, you know, high school, listening to the punk bands I listened to. And then we go out and play shows, and you see posters for them up on the walls, and you're like, we're playing the same club as those guys. They're huge. They're massive. Like, you know, it still just blows me away that there's, you know, I can even consider thinking that I'm on any type of similar level as some of these bands that, you know, smaller bands that I listen to.
It can be surreal sometimes.
It very much is. It really is. There's been definitely a couple moments. And like you said, we performing at the Junos, that was just a surreal one. That was, we're in a full arena. You know, we typically don't play gigs that big. So to play in a full arena, like at the Junos, playing our hit song, you know, kind of country, and, you know, and just, you know, and, you know, it was emotional. Like, there was, you know, I definitely was just lots of reflection and thinking about getting to that point. And as crazy as it was, as you're just up there, like, don't screw up.
Not now.
You're still doing that. You know, I still do that, you know? But yeah, it's crazy, because it just, you know, for myself, it's a lot, you know, the journey has been as long as it has been. And, you know, I do have to make the joke though, like, you know, of someone just kind of being plucked out and put into it. Like, Daryl, our bass player, this was the first band that he's ever been in. So I saw how you just kind of closed and almost rolled your eyes on that one. And yeah, you get it. Like, after
it's just,
after the work that I've done in my life to get to this point, and he just like, oh, I'd like to play bass in a band.
You reminded me of that. I had my notes. It said that Simon grabbed the rest of the musicians off a Craigslist ad.
Yeah. I will say it's a great story, and it's factual. Like, the band did start on Craigslist, but what ended up happening was, like, a lot of those Craigslist people kind of like, they kind of fell off, and then it turned into the more familiar, like, well, who do you know? Do you know? What connection do you have? I mean, that's how I ended up being in the band. And, you know, I think just Daryl's friendship with Simon, and Simon's brother actually was a part of, like, how he ended up getting in the band. So, yeah, while Dave and Izzy are basically the only remaining members from the Craigslist ad, the rest of us were all like, who do you know? I know
in network.
And again, yeah, that was, you know, a couple members I'd played in previous bands with. And I was good friends with Simon's older sister in high school, actually. We were in some similar friend circles. So it was always, there's the, you know, oh, Jared plays drums. Yeah, yeah. I guess if we need someone, we'll give him a call. Like, you know, and that was like, literally, and this is kind of going back. I'm easing my way out of bands, kind of like, okay, guys, I'm leaving. Okay, guys, I'm leaving. I'm going to wrap this up by the time I'm 30. And I think I was just down to one band. Maybe two, maybe kind of two, but one was kind of fizzling out on its own anyways. And that's when I got the call. Like I think it was in my mind, slow down by the time I'm 30. And then I hit 30 and I get a call to be in this band. And you're like, I was familiar with them. I was familiar with their music. I was into it. It really wasn't my style. Like there was a lot more of the folk and country type vibe, a little bit of bluegrass in there that wasn't necessarily my style, but there was definitely elements of it. Like I always thought like the early bluegrass type songs, like I just played them like they were punk songs. Like
yeah, no, it would work.
It'd work. So like I kind of love that. I kind of love that one. But yeah, so yeah, here's the whole story coming together of Jared just going to kind of back out of music. And then just as a bit of a Hail Mary, it's okay, well, I'll join the Strumbellas. And, again, vivid memories of the phone call. It was John who gave me the call. I was enjoying a nice afternoon in High Park in Toronto with my girlfriend and got a call. And, I remember even her reaction to like, oh, no, you're joining another band. Like, I thought you were getting out of this. Like, what are you doing?
I left 3 and I'm going to get one new one.
Yeah.
We're still good.
It's the way this one's shinier, like, so, I mean, I always kind of found that to be a little bit interesting in that it was like, I thought I was done and I thought that was going to be it for me. And then, I had resolved to the fact that, my experience was what it was, which did, before joining the Strumbellas, like I did get some touring in, did have a couple albums released nationally. And I had checked off a couple, bucket list things that I did want to accomplish with music, at that point. So I was, I don't want to say I was ready to call it quits, but I was going to be okay. If I moved on from it. But it's just so in me, like, it's so much in my blood. And even, kind of opening this conversation of just without music, what do I do? I'm not even sure. I mean, I'm glad I didn't stop.
You're segueing nicely. So we're 92 minutes in. There's one more small thing I want to chat about.
You keep saying that, and we have a comment that you're going to have me on for 3 hours. I mean, I know 3 hours.
I know Cindy's saying that, but again, you mentioned bucket list, you mentioned music, and you released your solo record.
Yes,
company store.
Yeah,
and that's the thing, because I was just like, I know you're short on time a little bit, but I'm like, I will not go to bed and without kicking myself if I don't bring this up, because I wanted to ask you, like, what was that process like? Like, what advice would you give someone that's, been behind the kit for such a long time, being like, you know what, if you want to put a record out, like, here's some advice, here's some thoughts.
If you're anything like me, it's just do it. Don't overthink it and just do it. And yes, it was a bucket list thing, and you could probably appreciate being a drummer yourself, and every joke that's ever been made, drummers bringing music to the band, which interestingly, I won't say it was the first, but like Strumbellas were one of the most open groups that I'd been with to hear what I had to offer. Which ended up just that kind of being really interesting and continues on. Like the band is such an open forum for anyone to contribute. Whereas, maybe not when I was in my 20s, but definitely when I was a teenager, it was very much, no, you're on drums. Like we don't want to hear your song. Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's fine. Yeah, you don't know at all. So but I had been writing, like I have been writing since I was in high school, and I'd probably tried to pitch songs, and they never went anywhere, and so you end up with just a massive pile of ideas, because it's it's a creative outlet that I like to. I enjoy it, as a even if it just ends up being one of my hobbies of just making my own music. Like I get satisfaction from that, but it was I just really always wanted to do it. It was just always like, I've written these songs. Getting a band together just ended up being difficult. Like this idea that I would like front a band, that always was a challenge because I was so busy drumming in so many things. It was also just like, I'm good at drumming. Like, let's just do something I know I'm good at, you know, like, so I focused on that. And yeah, it just ended up like it started as just something to do kind of when we were off tour. And I think it was after Hope, I ended up kind of starting the first recording sessions and did a couple songs, and I did a couple songs 6 months later, another couple 6 months later. And then just kind of sat on them for a really long time before I kind of convinced myself that in the middle of a pandemic was the best time to release a solo project.
bring it full circle.
So, you know? But to be honest, I don't know if I would have put the record out had the pandemic not happened. Because I was so busy with Strumbellas, it was hard to find the time that I really needed to breathe, to focus, to put the efforts in, because I didn't want to just, just kind of just somewhat quietly, just, okay, here it is. Like I did, I did work with a publicist, and, I did, kind of run my own radio campaign, and I did my own social media, and I did my own, I hired, I'm not a great graphics person, so I hired people to do that and to work on videos for me and to, do some of the music and stuff. And it's also difficult. As this ties into it as well. Part of my reflection and trying to find, kind of find myself a little bit more during the pandemic. Ultimately, the long story short is I was exposed to the idea that maybe my brain didn't work quite the same as other people's did. And in just bringing that story around, I ended up talking to my doctor, spoke with psychologists, and ended up being assessed as fitting the criteria for ADHD. So that's been a game changer in my life. Just kind of learning what it means to be with. I ended up starting taking some medication for it as well. But taking that back to the idea of the solo album being released, like in hindsight, like the effort it took me to get that organized, to make it all happen, did literally take like a solid 3 months of time. The album's done, it's finished, it's mastered, it's in the can, and I just need to set a release date and just start doing all the things you need to do. And it took me 3 months to get as organized as I needed to be to get it to happen. Hindsight, you're like, I wish I'd started taking medication way earlier in life, because things like that are so much easier for me now. It's been a very positive experience. I don't need to get too deep into it, but again, with the segues and the tying in, Greatest Enemy is very much a song about dealing with mental health. Very much, Simon signaling, just in the way that he does it, just kind of tells his story and allows people to relate or identify, or at least let them know that they're not alone. And give them that kind of sense of, those feelings of hope and those feelings of positivity, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So having said that, coming in, like, taking the time to kind of explore my own mental health and just kind of just see where I sit, like, and feeling how positive of an experience it's been for me. Despite my absolute reluctance to even consider that something might be going on. And the fear and the stigma and, all that surrounds why we don't give enough attention to mental health as we do. Like, I'm totally guilty of it. I don't want to expose my weaknesses, I'm a manly dude, and I don't cry and I don't have emotions, and, so I think it's all like, just all of this has been such the pandemic, me doing the album, having the time to reflect, giving Simon time to heal, coming out with the song Greatest Enemy, which is, something, we've involved Cam H on it. We're trying to raise some money for those guys as well. And just trying to, we're front row to see, how Simon's been dealing with things and the struggles that he had. And it's just like, I don't wish that on anybody. And I wish there was more help and more support for people. And I wish that the stigma wasn't there. Like, I wish people could talk about it more. And I wish, I just wish for everybody positive and healthy and feel good and not to suffer in silence in their own and have battles in their own heads over everything that's going on, and just know that, there are people to listen, and there are people that will understand. And and just, just on a positive note, you can get through it. There is help.
Yeah, I think we are making steps. And you mentioned, like, there's a very common thread, especially with men. There's a very common thread of just like not asking for help, not feeling like you can actually ask somebody else how they're doing. Like, really, how are you doing?
Yep.
And the last year, again, with Toronto in particular, like lockdowns, people not really not going and doing anything, like people not really seeing their friends or family. And it's like that question, especially last holiday season, I know a lot of people were feeling it. Just like, how are you really doing? Because like the year was rough, and December is super rough. Yeah. When you can't even visit people and you can't go for your dinners, and like, it's just like what you consider normal, and like you're getting through the year, and you should be thinking like, oh, we're going to get through this. It's like it was tough, and January was tough for a lot of people too. But I think we are making steps where people can talk about stuff, and as you say, the stigma around it, it's just like, when you're like, to bring it full circle, like when you're in a band, you're in a serious one, you're in a marriage, and it's like you need to have these checks once in a while just to make sure people are going. But because sometimes what someone doesn't say, or how someone's body language is, or like you see somebody, because like I was sick a couple of years ago and I brought someone on tour with us, and I'm like, part of you being here is to make sure I'm okay, because my bandmates know that I just truck through stuff. Yeah, it's like, if it looks like I'm not good, you are the one, not to put this pressure on you, but you're the one to pull the chute on this if I gotta go home, because I don't want to be out here longer than I really should be, sort of thing. But I do think we're getting better. I think, like, the evolution and the process of everything, it's like people are comfortable bringing this stuff up, and it's.
But and it's and I think we're doing what we can. We're spreading the word. We're not even having a conversation about it. Like, 5 years ago, would it have been brought up? 10 years ago, I don't know.
15 years in a jam space ago, probably not.
Probably not at all.
Probably not.
Probably not. So I think we're getting there. But it is. This whole thing is just people are for myself, it was, I wasn't being distracted with just the everyday. Like, I wasn't being distracted with, oh, I've got this date to look forward to, I got to go on this tour, I got to do this kind of thing. And you start to recognize, kind of where it's kind of coming apart at the cracks a little bit, or where the seams are starting to expose a little bit, kind of thing. And I fortunately had a really good friend kind of open up to me about some of the things that they had going on, and that's what really triggered me to be like, hey, I kind of feel the same way. I kind of think the same way. I totally relate to what you're saying. And, they kind of talked through their process a bit. And I was like, dude, thanks for opening up to me, because it encouraged me to do it. And, I'm hoping somewhere along the lines, like, it's just, I have the opportunity to pass that on. And I think, releasing the song, kind of focusing on the mental health aspect of it. I've experienced what it's like to have hit songs, and that was really satisfying. If I could experience what it's like to have a song that kind of means something to people and kind of helps them out in a positive way, like, there's I feel as though that could feel really rewarding. And if I can be part of that, then I'll feel pretty blessed.
No, it can't say it any better. Can't say any better. I just wanted to say I think this is probably a good spot to start wrapping this up here. Anyone else you want to give a shout out to while we're here?
No.
Because you forget somebody and
no one. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I know what it's
problem. Is one name and then the other, and then my mom's like, "Why didn't you mention my name?"
You have 17 missed messages.
Thank you. Yes. Well, no, how about shout out yourself for being in touch and inviting me on?
Well, thank you.
Do you get shout outs on your own podcast?
No, that you're the first, but that's a pro move.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, I think this is probably a good place to wrap this up. I wanted to say with Company Store, because I have that part of my brain where I second guess myself, and it's "Some Days" my favorite track on the record.
Okay.
I listened through a couple times today, and
there's my mom with the winky, the heart face in the comments there. Yeah, I know.
For those just listening, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I just want to thank everybody.
Sorry, were you saying something nice about one of my songs?
Yes. saying "Someday" is my favorite track on Company Store. Go check it out on Spotify.
Thank you.
That's where I get it. And if you want to help musicians out, Apple Music pays out better than Spotify currently. But anyways, just want to thank everybody.
Go to my website, jeremydrury.com. You can buy a physical CD, and that I make the most on that one.
There you go. That's the order. I just want to thank everybody in the chat hanging out with us tonight on DearBands Live. We'll go through some of the comments later and questions and reply to those. Again, my guest tonight, singer-songwriter, just recently released his debut solo record, Company Store, and also the drummer of Juno Award winning group, the Strumbellas. Jeremy Drury, thank you so much again for joining us tonight.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. I've had fun. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. All right, see you later, everybody.
We hope you all enjoyed the evening show. I gave it the music. I just got to get the NPR voice going, you know?
All right, sounds good. All right, see you later, everybody.
Right on.